"You don't belong here," they spat at him, their voices dripping with disgust. Members laughed openly, pointing at his clothes and whispering, "Why is he even here?" One even sneered, "Go back to where you came from. You don't fit in." But what happened next would shock everyone on that prestigious country club green. Before we dive in, I want to know, what country are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if you love real stories that inspire and shock, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a video. Marcus adjusted his golf cap and took a deep breath as he walked through the towering gates of the Hillside Country Club. The green lawns stretched endlessly under the morning sun, and the scent of freshly cut grass mingled with the faint aroma of expensive cologne. To any passerby, it looked like a paradise reserved for the elite, the wealthy, and those born into privilege. But Marcus wasn't here for show. He was here to play the game he loved, and to prove that talent and determination aren't measured by one's clothes, skin, or background. As he stepped onto the main pathway leading to the clubhouse, he immediately felt the stares. Heads turned, conversations paused, phones appeared in hands to discreetly capture the unusual sight, a young black man walking confidently into their exclusive domain. "You don't belong here," a sharp, disdainful voice cut through the murmurs. Marcus froze for just a moment. It came from a man in a perfectly pressed white polo, holding a club in one hand while pointing at him with the other. "Excuse me?" Marcus replied, calmly, though his pulse quickened. Another voice, this one female, sneered from across the patio. "Seriously, what are you doing here? This isn't a public park." Laughter erupted from a small group behind her. They whispered among themselves, eyes flicking toward Marcus like he was some kind of spectacle. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond immediately. Instead, he observed. The members, all impeccably dressed and radiating entitlement, assumed that their words could push him out without question. Their arrogance was thick in the air, heavy enough to taste. One member muttered under his breath, "Why is he even here?" And the words weren't meant to be heard, but Marcus caught them, every single one. Another man leaned casually against the railing and smirked. "Go back to where you came from. You don't fit in," he added, voice loud enough for several others to nod in agreement and snicker. The humiliation was public, the kind designed to shame, to assert dominance, and to make Marcus doubt himself. But instead of crumbling, a quiet determination settled over him. He adjusted his grip on his golf bag, which looked modest compared to the designer gear everyone else had, and continued walking toward the clubhouse entrance. Each step was deliberate, calm, and unshakable. The laughter followed him like a shadow, and whispers trailed behind, but Marcus's mind was focused. He wasn't here to argue. He was here to play, and to make sure that by the time he left, every single person who dared to humiliate him would realize they had underestimated him. The main lobby of the club gleamed with polished marble floors and crystal chandeliers. A young receptionist looked up, eyes wide as she took in Marcus's presence. "Do you have a tea time?" she asked politely, but there was a hint of doubt, a silent echo of the whispers outside. "Yes," Marcus replied, his tone calm but confident. "For the 8 a.m. tournament." She nodded, hesitated for a fraction of a second, then handed him a scorecard and directions to the first tee. As he walked away, Marcus noticed more stares. Members whispered openly now, the audacity of his calm defiance stirring both curiosity and irritation among them. Marcus made his way to the first tee, each step measured. The members surrounding the green had now formed a semicircle, as if observing a rare event. Their whispers carried sharp words like, "Who does he think he is?" and "He won't last 10 minutes out here." One older man, the type who clearly lived for prestige and control, leaned on his cane and squinted. "Do you really belong here?" he said, a cruel smirk forming on his lips. Marcus paused, looked him in the eye, and simply smiled. It wasn't a smile of arrogance. It was the kind that comes from knowing your worth. A gust of wind carried the tension across the green. The whispers were replaced by a few stifled chuckles, and Marcus could feel the eyes burning into his back as he positioned himself at the tee. He took out his driver, examined the club with a professional's focus, and prepared to take his shot. Every detail of his posture, every movement, screamed precision and dedication. As he swung, the ball soared perfectly down the fairway, landing closer to the hole than any of the members had expected. A collective gasp ran through the group. Marcus's calmness and skill had pierced through their judgmental facade, leaving a moment of stunned silence. But even as the ball rolled, Marcus knew this was just the beginning. The whispers, the stares, the cruel jokes hadn't broken him. They had only set the stage for something far greater, a revelation that would turn their assumptions upside down. And in that silence, as Marcus prepared for his next shot, every member of the Hillside Country Club would soon learn that appearances could be deceiving, and that those who judge too quickly often face the harshest surprises. Marcus stood at the edge of the green, carefully wiping his sweat-dampened hands on a plain towel. Around him, the elite members of the Hillside Country Club continued their quiet muttering, some openly shaking their heads in disbelief. Their expressions reflected a mixture of shock, contempt, and barely concealed panic. Marcus knew they weren't accustomed to seeing someone like him, someone they assumed didn't belong, handling the course with such skill and confidence. As he lined up for his next shot, Marcus's mind wandered briefly to the countless hours he had spent perfecting his swing. Early mornings at local courses, long drives home after working 2 jobs, the sacrifices, the criticism, the doubt, every moment had led to this. And yet, here he was, standing on the manicured lawns of the most prestigious country club in the state, facing an audience that thought he was nothing. He glanced at the members clustered near the first hole. Their judgmental eyes tracked his every move. One woman whispered to another, loud enough for him to hear, "How did he even get in here?" A man smirked, nudging his friend. "I bet he doesn't even know how to read the scorecard." Their ignorance and arrogance filled Marcus with a quiet, burning resolve. Marcus knew words wouldn't work. They never did. Pride and prejudice were impervious to logic. So instead, he decided to speak through action. Every swing, every putt, every measured step would convey a message far louder than their insults. And more importantly, Marcus had a secret, something that would turn their assumptions completely on their head. He took his stance at the next tee, focusing on the ball. The early morning sun glinted off his driver as he swung. The ball cut through the air with perfect precision, landing just a few feet from the hole. A few members gasped audibly. One, who had sneered moments ago, whispered, "No way," under his breath, unable to hide his astonishment. Marcus paused, watching the reactions carefully. Whispers turned to mutters, mutters to stunned silence. He had already achieved something far greater than just a perfect shot. He had disrupted their narrative. The narrative that they had carefully constructed in their minds, that someone like Marcus didn't belong, was unraveling before their eyes. But Marcus didn't stop there. He knew that skill alone wouldn't leave a lasting impression. He needed them to realize there was more to him than meets the eye. With a calm, almost casual tone, he addressed a few members nearby.
Interesting course, Marcus said, nodding towards the clubhouse. Beautifully maintained. You must be proud to have such a place. One of the members, trying to regain control, scoffed. Yeah, and you? What brings you here? Marcus smiled faintly. Oh, I have a connection here. Let's just say I know the owner personally. He and I have been in business together for a few years. A ripple of disbelief ran through the group. Heads turned sharply. Whispers spread like wildfire. Wait, he knows the owner? Are you serious? Some members stepped back instinctively, as if physically realizing that they had underestimated him. Marcus continued his calm, deliberate walk toward the next hole. He added, I thought you'd like to see me play. It's always interesting to see reactions when someone you dismiss suddenly changes the narrative. The subtle tension in his voice, the quiet confidence, and the hint of insider knowledge were enough to unsettle them. Those who had laughed moments ago were now exchanging nervous glances. Some whispered apologies under their breath, others shifted uncomfortably, realizing they had been too quick to judge based on appearances. Marcus took his next shot. Another flawless swing. The ball rolled perfectly, coming to rest just inches from the cup. Silence fell. For a moment, the arrogance of the Hillside Country Club members was replaced with awe and disbelief. Marcus didn't need to say more. They were beginning to see the truth. He was not just a golfer. He was someone whose influence carried authority, someone whose capabilities were far beyond their shallow assumptions. And yet, Marcus smiled to himself, knowing the best part, the full reveal, was yet to come. They had no idea how much influence he actually wielded, and how the very people who tried to humiliate him would soon face the humbling reality of their own prejudice.
Marcus walked calmly toward the next hole, his eyes scanning the group of members who had gathered around the green. The whispers were louder now, tinged with uncertainty and a hint of fear. Their confidence had begun to crumble, and Marcus knew it. Every smirk, every laugh, every cruel word they had directed at him just an hour ago had fueled his resolve. He stopped near a bench, casually resting his golf bag against it. The members shifted uncomfortably. One man cleared his throat, trying to reassert authority. So, you know the owner, huh? Who is it exactly? His voice carried skepticism, but also a nervous edge. Marcus smiled faintly, deliberately slow, letting the suspense hang in the air. You all know Mr. Carlton, right? Chairman of the Hillside Country Club, the man who's overseen this place for over 20 years? The group nodded hesitantly, unsure where he was going. Well, Marcus continued, he and I have had several private meetings over the past few years. We've collaborated on projects, investments. I've even advised him on the course renovations you see around you. The murmurs escalated into audible gasps. One of the older members, the one who had sneered at him earlier, blinked rapidly, unable to mask his shock. Wait, you're saying you've been working with Carlton? Yes. In fact, he specifically asked me to join the tournament today. He wanted me to show what dedication and skill really look like, regardless of who you are or how you appear. The whispers turned into murmured apologies and awkward shuffles. Some members avoided eye contact, while others stared, mouths slightly open. It was the ultimate reversal. The person they had humiliated and laughed at wasn't just a visitor. He held influence over the very club they thought defined social hierarchy. One woman muttered, I can't believe this. Her words trailed off as she realized that all their judgment had entirely been misplaced. Marcus let the moment linger. He knew that letting them stew in their disbelief would leave a stronger impression than any words could. Every insult, every mocking glance had been countered by his calm demeanor, his skill on the course, and now the revelation that he was no ordinary participant. He moved toward the next tee with measured steps, the ball tucked carefully under his arm. "It's funny," he said quietly, loud enough for the nearest members to hear, "how quickly people judge what they don't understand. Today you learn something very important. Appearances can be deceiving, and assumptions can cost you dearly." A few members whispered to each other, nervously glancing at him. Some flushed with embarrassment, while others clenched their fists, struggling to maintain dignity. Marcus's presence had shifted the entire atmosphere. The laughter, the sneers, the whispers, all replaced by a tense, almost reverent silence. He positioned himself at the tee, taking a deep breath before swinging. The ball flew straight and true, landing mere inches from the hole. The group collectively gasped again, some barely able to contain their astonishment. Marcus looked around, catching the eyes of those who had mocked him earlier. No words were needed. The point had been made. He wasn't just a golfer, not just a visitor. He was a force they had underestimated, and now they had no choice but to acknowledge his worth. As he picked up his next ball, Marcus smiled subtly. The best part, the full lesson, and the complete shock was yet to come. The members' world, built on arrogance and prejudice, was about to face a reckoning they would never forget.
Marcus stood at the tee for the final hole, the morning sun glinting off his perfectly aligned driver. Around him, the members of the Hillside Country Club were frozen in disbelief, unable to shake the reality that the young man they had humiliated not only belonged here, but had utterly outshone them on their own course. The air was thick with tension. No one dared make a sound, yet every eye was locked on Marcus, every whisper replaced by stunned silence. The same people who had laughed, mocked, and belittled him now watched in awe, their confidence crumbling under the weight of their own prejudice. Marcus adjusted his stance, took a slow, deliberate breath, and swung. The ball flew gracefully through the air, landing just inches from the hole. A collective gasp echoed across the green. Some members instinctively turned away, their faces pale with embarrassment, while others couldn't help but mutter in disbelief. How did he do that? But Marcus wasn't finished. He didn't need to shout or gloat. His actions spoke louder than any words. Each precise swing, each calculated step toward victory was a statement. Skill, patience, and dignity were far more powerful than arrogance and cruelty. A few members, those who had earlier sneered and spat insults, now shifted uncomfortably, realizing how profoundly they had misjudged him. One older gentleman muttered under his breath, We were wrong," but the words came too late to erase the humiliation. As Marcus walked toward the clubhouse after finishing his round, he held himself with quiet confidence. He exchanged polite nods with the few members who dared acknowledge him, their respect mixed with lingering shock. Meanwhile, others muttered apologies, some half-hearted, others sincere, unable to reconcile the gap between their assumptions and reality. The truth had hit hard. Marcus had not only played flawlessly, but had revealed a side of himself that they could never have anticipated. He wasn't just a golfer. He was a symbol of patience, resilience, and intelligence. The very club they had tried to use as a stage for humiliation had become the setting for their own reckoning. Marcus paused briefly on the steps of the clubhouse, glancing back at the green. The members who had laughed at him were now quiet, their arrogance replaced by a mix of awe and shame. He allowed himself a small, satisfied smile, not from revenge, but from the knowledge that justice had been served in the simplest, most undeniable way, through excellence,
calmness, and integrity. Before leaving, Marcus addressed the nearest group, his voice calm yet commanding. "Remember this moment," he said. "Judgment without understanding only exposes your own ignorance. Always measure people by their actions, not appearances." The words hung in the air, heavy with truth. Members nodded silently, some ashamed, others reflective, knowing they had been caught in the harshest lesson of all. Prejudice always underestimates the strength and worth of those it targets. And as Marcus finally walked away from the Hillside Country Club, the whispers, the laughter, and the disdain that had greeted him that morning were replaced by something far lasting: respect, humility, and the undeniable memory of the day the young man they had tried to humiliate proved them all wrong.
Marcus walked slowly down the path leading away from the Hillside Country Club, the sun warm on his back and the perfectly manicured greens behind him. He paused for a moment, taking a deep breath, letting the events of the morning settle in. Every glance, every whisper, every cruel word from the members had been absorbed and transformed into fuel for his quiet triumph. Today wasn't just about golf, it was about dignity, resilience, and proving that skill and character always outweigh prejudice. He remembered the moment he first stepped through the grand gates, the laughter and sneers, the pointed fingers and the stinging words, "You don't belong here." It had stung, yes, but Marcus had never let it define him. He had faced it with calm, with patience, and most importantly, with unwavering confidence in his abilities. Every swing of his club, every perfect putt had been a message louder than words could ever convey. As he glanced back one last time, he noticed the subtle changes in the faces of the members. The arrogance that had filled the air that morning had been replaced with humility, awe, and a hesitant respect. Some whispered apologies, others simply stared, stunned into silence. Marcus knew that lesson would stay with them far longer than any insult could ever fade. He reflected on his journey, the early mornings, the sacrifices, the doubters, and the people who had never believed he could achieve something extraordinary. Every challenge had prepared him for this moment, for this victory that went beyond the scoreboard. It was a victory of patience over prejudice, talent over entitlement, and resilience over ridicule. Marcus felt a sense of quiet satisfaction. Today, he hadn't just proven himself on the golf course, he had reminded everyone watching that appearances can be deceiving, and assumptions can cost far more than they realize. The very people who had tried to humiliate him had witnessed the truth firsthand. His skill, his knowledge, and his presence demanded respect, whether they wanted to give it or not. And as he turned to leave, Marcus's mind wandered briefly to the larger world outside this exclusive club. So many people faced judgment, ridicule, or exclusion simply because of their background, their skin color, or the circumstances of their life. He knew this was bigger than him. His story wasn't just his. It was a reminder to everyone watching that courage, talent, and dignity can break through even the most unyielding walls of prejudice. Before walking off, Marcus spoke softly, almost as if sharing a secret with the world. Never let anyone tell you where you belong. Your worth is defined by your actions, your integrity, and your courage, not by anyone else's narrow vision. And to everyone watching this story unfold, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And if this story inspired you, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and turn on notifications. More stories like Marcus's, full of courage, triumph, and life lessons are coming your way, and you don't want to miss a single one. Because sometimes the people who say you don't belong here are the ones who learn the hardest lesson. Never underestimate the strength of someone who refuses to be defined by others.